Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I am super excited about this episode because I have an absolute rock star as a guest today. Christine Haas with Christine Haas Media joins me. Christine is known throughout the land as an award-winning anchor and an investigative reporter. And she is just someone that I absolutely love. She is so bright and amazing and just an incredible person all around. She is the founder and CEO of Haas Communications, author of Call Me, and a former Emmy award-winning news anchor and investigative reporter. In 2015, Christine created a public relations and video telling story firm dedicated to delivering publicity and branding in a simplified way for her clients. Christine left TV news after 15 years in the business. She's anchored newscasts in some of the country's top news markets, including San Diego, Tampa, Minneapolis, Houston, and of course, Austin. She's been honored with numerous accolades, including Emmy Awards, national and regional Edward R. Murrow Awards, and more than a dozen Associated Press Awards. One of her award-winning stories investigated Texas's practice of recycling driver's license numbers and how it led to mistaken identity. That law led to a change in Texas law. Then in one of her proudest professional achievements, Christine's report on the SBA's misuse of Homeland Security funding was introduced as evidence in a congressional testimony. She is a firecracker. I'm super pumped for this one, so let's get started. Well, Christine, thank you so much for joining. No problem. I mean, what's your dog's name?
This is Nugget.
Nugget. Oh, I love it. How old is it? Boy or girl?
Boy.
Yeah. How old is Nugget?
He's about 2.5, and he had his teeth, a couple teeth removed recently, so he's got some surgery stuff on his legs. He looks ridiculous, but no, he's just he doesn't normally have a crazy haircut. Anyway.
This is perfect. So, welcome to the Ripple Effect Podcast, Christine and Nugget. I am so grateful that you are joining us. This is fantastic. Like I mentioned to you, I have just been a huge fan of yours for a long time. I consider you such a rock star. Anybody that is in the Austin market obviously recognizes you from the news, but you have gone on to do amazing things separate from your newscasting career, right? And I'm excited to learn about Christine Haas Media and all the great stuff that you're doing there. But most importantly, just thank you for joining the Ripple Effect Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, you are a true testament of the fact that you as an independent entrepreneur can connect with the media and get connection. And I just love the fact that we met those years ago because you sent me your book. Yeah.
Well, that was a long time ago, the first edition of the Ripple Effect. And you were so gracious to take the book and actually came back to me with, just great interaction. And you and I have stayed friends ever since then. You moved, I think at that point you moved to Houston and then you were in San Diego and you came back to Austin. And you've just had such an amazing, career trajectory, but I've been so grateful that you have allowed me to stay connected to you all this time. And I'm proud to know you as both a person that's out there making, good things happen in the world, but just because you're just a solid individual, but because of the friendship that you foster, just because of who you are and what you do. And so I'm excited to dig in and learn a bit more about Christine Haas Media, all the great services that you're offering, but most importantly, we'll come back to it, but I want to learn about how you got into this and this process of just, getting in front of camera and being able to tell the story. But tell us about Christine Haas Media and where you focus and what you're doing today.
Yeah, when I left the media, it was a hard decision. Hopefully he won't bark. It was a difficult decision because I was a journalist through and through. It was an anchor and investigative reporter, and I loved it so much. But what I was starting to realize, of course, was the fact that ratings were declining, and the writing was on the wall for media overall. And this was about 8 years ago. But when I was in San Diego, I was getting hired by some of the bigger PR firms, which of course I was very impressed with and actually intimidated by. They're the $10,000, $15,000 a month retainer type of PR firms where the founders have master's degrees, and then they would bring me in and ask me, to go through as a consultant for the day why they weren't getting coverage for their clients, and they were trying to see what the issue was. Yeah. And it made me realize that no matter how many degrees you have or however significant your clients might be, if you don't understand how the media works, you can make some very basic errors and not get the type of reward that your client is desiring. A lot of people thought press releases work or these mass emails and all these things, and they were making very basic mistakes that could be tweaked and get results. And I realized that, when you're in the news, you really do understand the recipe for a good news story. You understand what those reporters or writers need and when. You understand how to position a client properly. And from a reputation management standpoint, you understand what they could face with some of these questions. So, we do brand awareness. We put people on TV. In some cases, my clients hire me to try to stay out of the news because they have an issue going on. And so maybe it's a legal issue. And then also we do media training. So, companies will bring us in and let us grill them. And as a former investigative reporter, I can help them frame their sound bites that are almost sanitized, so to speak. Like you watch a political debate, how they can pivot those answers quickly. So that's what we've been doing, and I've really enjoyed it. Like I said, I missed it for a few years, and now that I'm really deep into this business and it's growing and scaling, I've learned a lot about myself individually and as an entrepreneur, but I don't think I could ever go back. I'm just grateful for the times that I've had as a journalist, but I also use the media now as an engine to help give a platform to my clients, and it's been good.
Well, the great thing I see about it being, sort of a looky-loo for the work that you do, right, is that you have an amazing ability to spot the right kinds of clients to work with, people that have great products, great services, but there's a story behind it and how you align that with the media. And you and I talked off camera about just how negative the media can be perceived and how some of the ways that you've been able to leverage some of your client stories is kind of that respite for the audience, for the viewer to be able to learn about these great folks and what they're doing and be able to kind of take a quick break from all the negativity that's out there. But you have a real eye for talent in that regard in terms of clients that you work with and the messages that you're trying to convey, because they're brilliant. So you're obviously fantastic at this job.
Well, you should be my agent, but thank you. Well, I will tell you from a business perspective, and you would get this, and certainly I've learned a lot just reading your book and listening to your platforms as well. But you'll understand, there's always growing pains and pain points that an entrepreneur has. And one of the things that I kept hitting from some of the prospective clients that I would get would be, well, what is guaranteed? What can you promise me as far as media goes? And, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a former journalist. I can't guarantee you anything, and that's where I was starting to realize they've been so burned by companies that literally they'll pay. I had one client tell me, and he's still a client, thank goodness, but he said, I paid a PR firm $100,000 last year and I got nothing. And it's for a bigger company, but he said, I got nothing. And he said, so I remember in the first call, what can you promise me? And I said, well, I can't really, control the news, and neither can my team, but we can do the best we can as far as chances. So when I kept hitting that, especially when COVID started, I realized that was a real pain point for people. They don't want to put a hefty retainer down and just throw it up in the air and say, well, let's see, hopefully it's good luck. So what we started to do is be more selective about the clients and make sure that they were a good fit. And right now what we do is we guarantee certain amount of placements per month, or we don't take them on. And That's we great. Let them know that, we'll do a short-term type of 3-month deal, test it out. And I have to say, I'm fortunate that we haven't had to advertise. Everything has been by referral. And, of course, as an entrepreneur, you always have ups and downs. And I was, of course, when COVID hit, getting really nervous. But COVID actually was a perfect time for businesses and entrepreneurs to really stand out, because more people were on their mobile device. More people wanted to consume what was happening. So it actually was a plus. In addition to that, the one thing that's been amazing through COVID, if anything can be amazing, is the fact that I can put people on TV with Zoom, and they don't have to get on a plane. They don't have to go to a studio. And so I will be able to say, and that's really helped me be able to promise stuff to people, because in some cases it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you this amount in this pocket of a city, but I do know that if you're open to doing Zoom from San Diego or Austin or San Antonio, depending on where they live, I know I can sell your story to those stations as well. So Zoom has opened up a whole new opportunity. And I will say, I was talking to a producer recently about, well, is that going to change? Are they going to open up the studios? And they were thinking about it for a bit, but then with this Delta variant, they're back to being closed. So it's you gotta, as an entrepreneur, always look at your pain points and try to figure out a way to make them an advantage. And that's
Yep.
what I've learned over that time.
Well, that's an amazing lesson, and you've been able to leverage it. And it's kind of, funny that you mentioned it, because I do think, business owners, executives especially, they're looking for guarantees. They're looking for that, what can you do for me? Because I have been in this situation where I hear, PR is important to my business, and I know I need to be out there and I need to be speaking, to the right audience in order to get the right attention that I need for my business. And they're looking for the shortcut to the answer, if you will, and the quick hit. And life's not always a guarantee in that regard. And especially with the media, right? Things change so dramatically from day to day. I love the approach that you take, like, hey, look, there are no guarantees, but here's what I'll do to provide you the best possible results. And I personally have a few folks that are in the space, and they don't all do that, right? It is about the retainer. It is about, we'll do our best. Yeah, it's very risky for a business owner to do it. So
yes. But and in fact, I had one client had been interviewed twice in some national outlets, and it was delayed. And he's been with me for a while now, very significant guy. And I was waiting for these outlets to finally publish it, and it was taking about 2 months, and nothing was happening, and it was really stressing me. And so I, and this is a true story, he'd tell you, I finally told him, I said, don't pay your retainer this month. I 100% believe that this is going to publish, but I want you to feel good about it. Don't pay it. And I canceled the invoice. And he was like, are you sure? I want to pay you. I said, nope, don't do it until it publishes. And it went like 2 more weeks or so, and nothing happened. And he texted me and he said, I saw all the work you're doing. I'm still paying you, Christine. You're working too hard for this. I'm paying you. I trust you. And it did come out. Yeah. But it's that kind of relationship that you learn to have with your clients as a business owner that really that helps, and I think that it will allow you to have a legacy as a brand or as a company. Because they know you're not just in it for the money. They know you really want significant. And I look at my entire business has been built by referral. Yep. And so I don't want ever for people to have a complaint, and if they do, I want to talk to them about it, so
get it resolved. Yeah.
It helps. Yeah.
Absolutely. The thing that just bounces off of you is the authenticity, right? And I think that for what you do and how you do it, not everybody in your field is that way, right? I think that's what differentiates you in a big way, because you are not only trying to build your brand by doing the right things by your clients, but at the end of the day, you want to see good come from the efforts that you have, and you want to see them experience the success, get the exposure, have the results that come to the business, because they'll come back to you more and more when that happens. So the fact that it isn't just about the money, it's about the results too, I think really helps you stand apart from most of the people in the industry.
And as you know, as a business owner, it's also about managing expectations, because, there are some people who think that as soon as they get on TV, like the phones are going to ring like crazy and they're going to get this surge of money, and it's not that way always. It depends what they have. If they've got a product and it's featured on the Today Show, then that's a different story. But if you're an attorney and you're coming to me, I help them understand that, even as a reporter, if I had a story and I needed somebody to go too fast and I'm new to the market and I don't have a source, I Google personal injury attorney Houston, and whatever pops up, I start calling and say, are you available for a news interview? Yep. It's the same thing. Think about it. If you're going to the doctor and you're new to a city and you're Googling around, you see one doctor that's already been on the news and has all these logos and maybe featured in Forbes or whatever, and then you see somebody who has a plain website. Which way are you going to lean? You're going to lean more towards the person who has more perceived credibility from the media. And that does not necessarily mean they're better, but they're well branded and they're more credible to the eye. And so I always tell people that it's an investment in your brand. It may trickle in more business as you grow, and you probably can't track that the same way. They aren't going to necessarily say, well, I saw that CBS logo on your website, so I chose you and I came in.
Sure.
They're probably not, but it's that perceived credibility. I always talk about like Gloria Allred, that famous attorney.
Yeah.
She built her entire career by just spotlighting controversy and being the go-getter as an attorney, all politics or all controversy aside. She built her brand that way.
She did.
And people can do that by building getting their exposure and being a trusted resource. And I'm just super passionate about it because I think that it lives on, for people. They're able to take that media exposure. And the other thing I'll say too is that I often tell people, I'm not trying to talk myself out of business, but you only need me for a short period of time. Yep. Because think about it, you're on TV last year and you're on TV last month and you start regurgitating those through your social media. Nobody's looking at the dates on the appearance. They don't
exactly
know,
right. That's
They're
right.
just like, oh, they were in the news. It's just that headline that people need to see for
That's
the
true.
brand recognition. So sure, come back to me, but you only need those little bits and then, see what it does for your business.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Yeah, although I think just talking to you, having you in a client's corner, that's probably why they continue to pay you. So you shouldn't talk yourself out of that, because at the end of the day, just the value of having you on speed dial and, hey, I've got this coming up, and whether it's a press opportunity or doing a keynote or being at a trade event, there are opportunities for those thought leaders to be in a position to be talked to and interviewed, et cetera. And so not everything is necessarily press related, but the value of what you bring to the table is helping reinstill that confidence. I can tell you as a business owner, I never have felt confident in front of the camera. I've never felt confident talking to anybody with the media because I don't think I'm all that particularly good. I know I'm passionate. No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, but it's always been something that I have steered away from because I'm like, I don't want to, it's scary. And for a lot of folks, I think they're in that category with me, right? But you, just even hearing you, right? You are that person that somebody needs to build up that confidence and to keep it at a high level, no matter what the audience might be.
Sure. And it's true that, even I go through these moments. We were talking about this off camera where I was in this routine, just really more for my own personal mental health and my well-being during COVID, is that I started holding myself accountable to doing 3 or 4 videos a day, just for social media or whatever, just to talk about what I was learning. And honestly, to get myself out of my sweatpants, because everybody was just kind of like, working from home. And it gets to your mental health, and you start going, well, maybe I need to really show up a little bit better. So I started doing that. And then I fell off of it. And I have to say, and I was thinking about trying to start doing some of it again, but I'm just like anybody else. I used to be paid to get myself dressed and to get on the news every night. And so it became a habit. But it's so easy for these kind of things to snowball where you go, well, I'm going to take a week off, or I'm going to take 2 weeks off. And then you realize for your own business how, I don't want to call it damaging, but how stagnant it could make your business, because you really do have to continue to put yourself out there for awareness. So I'm with you. Like, it's not easy for me to get myself to do it. I'm just like anybody else. And my clients, I tell them, we're going to prepare you. We're going to help you. And just think about ripping the Band-Aid and doing it. Yeah. And again, if you think about it, it's like you can do anything for a little while, right? Okay, so for these 3 months, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to have my suit coat ready. I'm going to have my Zoom set up, and I'm going to do media whenever I need to. Yep. Then you can take a break, but understand how your goals fit into all of that for your business and how these little things can make an adjustment. But overall, I think what I like most about doing on-camera stuff and what I hear you doing, and honestly, just listening to your podcast made me want to do some of them. It's just that it makes you energetic for growth. And unless we're growing, we're dying, right?
That's exactly right.
We got to keep doing that. And that's what I love about your message and about how connection and these little things that you do for people can have such an impact. And it couldn't be more true.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. Coming from a rock star like you, that means a lot to me. I promise you. So
no, it's the truth. Yeah.
Well, in your videos, I have to say, the ones that you were doing on Facebook and Instagram, you definitely have to do them, because I'm going through withdrawal not having you like pop up on my feed every week and say, hey, this is what I liked about it was this is what I'm going through and this is what I'm struggling with, which makes you easily identifiable. Even if we weren't friends and I was just seeing you, the topics and your approach to the topics, it's straightforward, it's simple, but it's powerful. And the beautiful thing about it is it's authentic. Just like I said with your clients, you come across, you just have an aura about you that basically people want to know more and be around that, which is why I think you're successful at what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. I will say, one of the things that I struggled with and still do, and from my own personal experiences, we all have ups and downs in life.
Yep. Yeah.
And sometimes when I started doing some of these videos, because I saw a lot of people that I listened to, Ed Milet, of course, Tony Robbins, all these other people. And, they're thought leaders. They come across so strong as if they've never had these challenges. Or if they talk about the challenges, they talk about how they've overcome them. And when I started doing some of that, I thought, God, I sound and I feel like such a hypocrite, because how can I tell people what to do when just a few months ago, I too was struggling with this stuff,
Sure.
And so I think that that's what I really wanted to do. And sometimes, in fact, I've had other friends and colleagues tell me, you're talking too much about your anxiety. People are going to think that you're unpredictable or something. And I'm like, no, I disagree.
Because
I really do. And honestly, I've had people, some very successful people, colleagues or whatever, who have messaged me after I'd post something about anxiety and say, I deal with that too. And I think that the top performers deal with that kind of stress too. And I thought, I don't think it's the right perspective to say that, life is always perfect in my life. It's not, I mean, we're entrepreneurs. We're struggling all the time. And that doesn't mean our personal life is perfect either, So,
it's rough. It can be rough.
It can be. Yeah.
I like that, because that's that authenticity that, I was mentioning earlier, is that you do share the good with the bad. And that really humanizes the message that you're putting out there. And I think that anybody that tells you differently, they are wrong. I disagree with it, because at the end of the day, that is what I think. And it's unfortunate, even, 10 or 15 years ago when we first met, right? Social media wasn't what it is today. And it is one of these things that I think and I tell people when I speak at a training or I'm doing a keynote, I tell people that we're the most connected that we've ever been in the history of mankind. And yet we're the most lonely in a lot of ways. We go through these struggles, and you see folks that are out there that are trying to put on airs or trying to be a certain way. And the reality is they're probably not. And the ones that actually hear the messages you're putting out there, like, oh my God, here's this amazing, beautiful woman who's got it all figured out, for you to say, well, I'm struggling with this, or I'm having these challenges. And they can identify and go, oh my gosh, me too. This is an opportunity for me to recognize that, we don't all have it figured out, and that sometimes we need somebody else's help and guidance to get a little further down the road.
And it's something, and I'm sure maybe you have dealt with this too, where, you're an author, you have this great progressive message, and it looks as if, you're the expert, and so I would look at you and think, you got no problems in your life. Everything, you've got it going on, and you're a thought leader, and I need to listen to you and respect you and understand that. And it's interesting, because someone said that recently to me, a mentor of mine, because I was complaining about the fact that I just felt like I wasn't getting a lot of real connection with friends, or even colleagues. I said, I just feel like, it's not a personal connection. I got to work on doing that more so. It's more about the professional component. And she said to me, well, Christine, do you realize that most people see you differently than you're seeing yourself? Like, they think you're everything is going great in your life, and that they don't even need to worry about you because you're so busy killing the world. And I thought, that's interesting. And I see that with you. And I think that that's what I just want people to understand, is that, and everybody knows nobody's life is perfect, but I want to be the first to say, I'd be a hypocrite to say that I'm perfect and that I've never made mistakes and that I'm not growing, because I continue to grow. But you can't put your head in the sand and pretend that, nothing's going to change, because that's what business is. In personal life, we've got to evolve.
That's right. Absolutely. Well said. And it's probably why you're such a valued resource to the clients that are dealing with sensitive situations, right? They're either in the press for the wrong reasons, or, they've had some challenges that have come up, and they're trying to figure out how to get themselves pulled back up and get the right kinds of, impressions back out there to improve their public or professional image. And I would see that, the fact that you can be open and honest as an individual helps guide and direct them from a professional perspective, because there's a lot of humbleness to it. And there's that authenticity piece again.
Yeah, and what I really do enjoy one part of the business, which is that media training, helping people understand, what they should or should not say when they do get those opportunities. And reputation management, it's so important these days. I mean, people end up in things, lawsuits, that type of stuff that they're trying to, make sure that they can get past and grow. And it's the nature of life and business is that, we're all going to have hiccups, but it should not be the legacy. And that's the one thing that I've learned just overall is that, if you focus consistently on the mistake that you made yesterday, you're not going to have your eye on the growth that you can have tomorrow. And so that's kind of the challenge. And that's why I love what you put out there every day is that you're always progressive about thoughts and being positive and connecting. And without that, especially right now, so many people are hurting,
Yeah.
It's a shame. COVID has really done that. And it's caused, as we were talking about off camera, it's caused a lot of people to avoid even educating themselves because they don't want to watch the news,
Yep.
They don't want to see the negativity. And I get it. Like I found myself in the same place where, it can get to be too much and I have to live in it because my clients are, either on TV or trying to keep them off TV and, or in the news overall. And, it can be a lot. So you have to really, be disciplined about how you're getting your education and not avoid educating yourself about things that are happening just because it's easier to ignore because
Yep.
it is painful. I mean, a lot of the stuff, it's just like, wow. And you probably see it in social media. It's almost like our whole world has become so divisive where people are literally breaking friendships, breaking family connections over something that's so ridiculous. I mean,
Yep.
we're all going to have different opinions, but just respect the other person's opinion. Don't try
absolutely.
to, that's my opinion. It's just, after all the years in the news, nobody knew my political affiliation. That's the way you have to be as a news anchor and reporter. And so they can't know. And that's kind of how I've always been is respectful where I'm just kind of neutral. And I live that way now, and I like it a lot better.
I agree. I do the same thing, and people always are trying to figure it out or ask me directly. And I say there are a few topics that I just don't talk about, religion, and I don't talk about politics. And everything else is pretty much fair game. And I'll give you an opinion and share freely what I think, which doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. But if you ask, I'll share. But for the most part, it is kind of interesting that people try to fit you into boxes. And, I teach through the ripple. It's like you have to look beyond some of that. And you have to look beyond some of the things that you may not like about a person, some of the things that you adore, because there's also some things in the in the background that you may not necessarily love. But you look at the whole person and you really try to embrace the opportunity to really connect and engage with them. And if they're important enough, you'll put the time, energy, and effort, and you'll take the good with the bad.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I am seeing that my battery power on my computer is low. So if I lose, do you want me to go get the plug?
Yeah. Do you want? Yeah, no problem. We can take a break. Yeah. You want to do it?
Yes.
There you go.
There we go. We're good.
Awesome.
Hold it up here. We're good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perfect. Well, no, adjust however you want or however you need.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, so I am curious, how did Christine Haas become Christine Haas? Like at the end of the day, how did you get into media? How did you know that you wanted to be in front of the camera? And how did the early part of your career sort of evolve?
Yeah, it's a good question. I grew up outside of Chicago. My dad was a police officer.
Really?
Humble beginnings. My mom stayed home with myself and my sister and raised us. And, I guess we lived on a farm, believe it or not, outside of Chicago, 80 acres, and I rode horses and competed. And I want to say that I think the riding, as a jumping, equestrian, that type of stuff, growing up very young, gave me a competitive nature, but it also gave me some discipline that I really had carry through. I don't know, I loved it so much. And right from a young age, I don't even remember how old I was. I think my mom started listening to Tony Robbins. And, that was when they were on tapes, right?
Yeah, I remember.
I feel very old right now. But, so I always heard some of that stuff in the background. And it caught on, and she would try to help me, before competitions and stuff like that to get my head in the right space because I still struggle with this. It's just, and I think we all do, where I would always doubt myself, and like, we don't have that much money. That horse is far more expensive. They have more tools. And so she'd always, and my dad as much as well, would just say, but you're good. You got to believe in yourself. And so I think it was right from that get-go where I just kept trying to fuel my brain consistently, even in high school and through college. I worked through college, just to every day. I remember in college, in fact, I was just talking about this pattern that I had that I loved and I need to get back to, is that every morning I would get up at 5 a.m., I'd go work out, and I would run listening to a Tony Robbins tape. Yeah. And it really shaped my entire mentality. And it's funny because almost like as a kid, even though college isn't necessarily a kid anymore, but it gave me that feeling of like anything was possible instead of like you were talking about. That's that inspiration that's resonating with many of your listeners, is the fact that, just try. Anything is possible. Stop limiting your beliefs. And I have to say, and I have been to a couple Tony Robbins events now as an adult, but I have to say that and Les Brown and Wayne Dyer and all of those people, they shaped my mentality. And so I was hungry for a job in TV. I got, into it in college, and we had a college TV show, and I got into news and had a ridiculous resume tape, but I loved it. And I just, I just immediately started saying, this is what I want to do. And I became immersed in it. I loved it so much. I loved good storytelling. I would reach out to good mentors who I'd identified in big market cities like Minneapolis. I mean, still to this day, some of these colleagues are still in the media, and I still talk to them, and they're in national news and that type of thing. But I just had such a passion for it. And it's funny because you look at anybody who has done something well, it's because they've gone all in, right? They love it so much, and they've gone all in, and they take risks. And even when things get tough, they try to step up and do, to get back up. And so I loved it, and the career continued to advance. And I would say as soon as I started to feel like it was, not as passionate, or I wasn't as passionate as I started to realize that was a bad sign. Yep. And so I'm glad that I transitioned the way I did now. But, the thing is that news anchors, you watch them all the time. What started happening is, at least about 9-10 years ago, they would hire me to be an evening anchor, which has the more significant salary, which of course everybody's drawn to. But what I really loved to do was the investigative reporting. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people would hire me as the anchor and think, oh, your reporting is cute. They didn't see it as like, what I really loved. And so that became kind of one of those obstacles where I was like, I felt like I had more to give than just be a news reader. Yep. And I shouldn't, not to detract from anybody who's a news anchor now, because it does take a skill, but my passion was really more about writing and storytelling.
Yeah. Well, so, I'm a big believer in connection points, little bite-sized morsels of information that you pick up about people that make them unique to you. Yeah. And, you've talked about a couple today, right? So I love the storytelling aspect because that's kind of my thing. I love doing that. It's my passion because everybody you connect with has a story if you just take the time to dig deep enough to look. And we unfortunately are in what I call a surface connect society where nobody ever goes below the surface. They never look to try and ripple their way into something more meaningful because there's some amazing people out there, but it takes a little bit to get it out of them. And, a lot of people are struggle at that level. So the storytelling piece is totally identified. I know nothing about horseback riding. However, I just recently watched, because I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, his daughter was in the Olympics, right? Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool, right? So got to watch it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I wish I could say I competed or did anything of that level. That's not the case, but it's like any other thing that you fall in love with. It's a sport that just becomes a passion. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it requires connection with another being, an animal that you have to be on the same page. And, it's a very unique sport for sure. And I saw an interview with her, about, the fact that you have this very famous, father, and, oh my gosh, didn't you feel the pressure to go into music or do whatever? And she said, I was always given the freedom to do my own thing. And the nice thing about being in the equestrian sport is that part of that is your own thing. It's such an individual sport and experience that I found a lot of value in that. I do a lot of material around my keynotes and whatnot about Bruce Springsteen, how much he inspires and motivates me, but it warmed my heart to know he raised kids like that, right? So kind of cool. Yes. I'm a huge
Yes.
fan. The other thing that you touched on is two other things. One outside of Chicago, so I have to ask you, Cubs or White Sox?
Oh gosh, if I had to have a gun to my head, probably Cubs.
Good,
But I'm
good,
not a
good,
huge
good,
baseball fan.
good. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, this whole interview was over right now. I grew up, being a lifelong Cubs fan, even though I never I was anywhere close to Chicago. I grew up in Albuquerque,
Yeah.
but it was the only cable station we had when I was a kid, and I just became a Cubs fan. And so
On
I'm,
WGN,
yeah,
probably.
WGN, yeah,
Yes.
back in the
Yep.
day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I follow them to this day, and I was so thrilled when they won the World Series, and have done nothing since then. But I'm a big fan. But the other aspect was, at your time in your life was the first time that I got exposed to Tony Robbins tapes as well, at the exact same age, and
Really.
it became a daily regiment for me. In fact, when some of my first early companies, I made all my teams go through them because there was just so much power and value in being able to recognize the power that you have within yourself and the
Yep.
confidence to be able to put it out there in the world. And it didn't matter what your product was or what your service was. If you weren't confident in yourself when you walk in the door, then you're not going to be confident doing anything relative to anything else, right? And it was really critical because I am painfully shy and introverted. I've been that way my entire life. And
I'm similar. Yeah.
yeah, so we have, there's another connection point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was really Tony Robbins that kind of pulled that out of me to say, look, that's not an excuse. You can't depend on that to put food on the table. You have to step outside of your comfort zone to try new things. And what I have always turned that into was, how do I connect with other people to help them do what they're doing in the world? You and I are similar in that regard, is we just want them to be successful, and we want to play one small little part in creating that one little tiny ripple to help them get to that next level.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's interesting because these people, it's more of a fake it till they make it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard this one. I still listen to these tapes, or I should say now YouTube videos over and
Yeah.
over again, and they really help me. But Les Brown has a speech that's out there on YouTube, and he talks about how at one point he was sleeping under his desk in his office in, I think it was Detroit at the time. And he was going out and speaking about how life is so great and you got to be positive. And he said, he felt like such a hypocrite because here he is going and sleeping in his office because he lost his home and he lost everything. And so, I kind of have a double-edged sword thought on that one. Like, that is a little hypocritical that you're doing that. But at the same time, it shows that the power of what you think and what you imagine you can do, you can achieve if you can just put yourself into almost like the imposter syndrome, right? You
Yeah.
put yourself into that person that you want to become. And if you act that way, that's who you can end up becoming. And that truly has helped me in the last year or so, is to really just focus on who I want to be and how I can overcome that. And religion, of course, for me is part of that, but just doing it under God's eyes. But that's such a big part. It's just the power of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I bet you know this name as well, Harvey McKay. Do you remember that author he was out of the Minnesota area, and he wrote a book called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive?
Oh yes, and I don't know if I finished that book, but I definitely know that book. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
he was actually kind of a hero of mine before I met or learned about Tony Robbins. I was reading this book. My dad brought it home from the office. He was somebody had come in and given it to him, and he's like, I'm never going to read this, but maybe you will as a sophomore in high school. And I read that book cover to cover, and became such a pivotal thing because one of the things that he preaches is being authentic. He owned an envelope company out of Minneapolis that ended up being a huge, huge success. But he was the guy from the company's perspective that he said, as CEO, I have to get out and I have to be the number one salesperson. I have to be the number one spokesperson. And I always have to be cognizant, even when I'm off, that I am on and I'm part of my brand. And
Wow.
I love this book so much. And you fast forward a couple of years later, well, more than a couple, in 2003-ish, 4-ish, I was thinking about writing this book, and I got invited to an event in Austin at the Westwood Country Club. My friend was taking me there because Harvey was bringing out a new book, and he was the featured speaker. And she knew I was a huge fan and what a big influence he had on my life, just kind of like Tony Robbins had. And she said, well, we're going to go to the kind of a pre-event, right, where you get to, have a little happy hour with Harvey. And I went through the reception line for him to sign. And I said, you completely changed my life. And part of the reason I'm an entrepreneur is because of what you said in your books and what I learned from you. And he's like, you just hang on a sec. I need to talk to you a little more. So I waited till everybody got their book signed, and he comes over and talks to me. And I told him what I was doing, and I was in the process of writing this book. And he said, look, I can't offer you an endorsement because I haven't read the book and don't know it. And I don't really do that. He said, but I will tell you, I've written 5 best-selling books, I think, at that point. And he said, the direction that you're going with the self-publishing route is something I'm really, really intrigued with. I would have done it myself. He said, I tell you what, give me your address and I'm going to send you something. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah,
right? And so, I got his autograph. I was super excited. And then 2 days later, I got a FedEx package that was like this thick of all the things that he had done in research to figure out what it would take to write a book on his own without the aid of an agent or a publishing house, etc.
Wow.
And he had a personal note that said, hey, Steve, you're creating ripples out there in the world. Keep doing it. I believe in you. You're going to get the book. And so, it's crazy, but it's one of those experiences that, to your point, right? If you don't take the chance, and if you don't reach out like you and I, connected so many years ago, you'll never get anything good to happen, right? So you have to step outside of that comfort zone. And so those guys had a really big influence on helping me have the courage to do that. But I have to also credit you. Much of what you put out there on social media, what you post, and just the messaging that you've given me over the years is also on that same level. And so you've given me the confidence to do things I wouldn't normally be comfortable doing. I mean, I'm on camera with Christine Haas. I mean, are you kidding me?
No, I mean, you make me feel better because we all are our own self-critics, and thank you. It makes me feel good to know that something that I said would have an impact on anybody, let alone you. But I think we have that similar energy in that we want to continue to learn, and we want to be a positive influence. And some people, they don't align with that, and that's okay. They can go off on their own because we want to keep being positive. Yeah,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Don't get in my way with your negativity because I don't want to hear it. Right.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Well, so let me ask you, we've talked about your business. We've talked about, your, background and how you got into media. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah, gosh. So I have a book called Call Me that is actually just a guide for people on how they can get their own press, and kind of like the stories we're talking about today of how people can utilize the media all on their own without using me or any of my team or any PR firm for that matter. There are things you can do to get a contribution out there. So there's places like Thrive Global and many other different industry outlets online where you can write your own article and submit it. Of course, they have to go through the editorial process, but you can be an author of that article and post it out there all on your own. Most people don't realize that it is that easy. So, for example, if you publish an art, and I don't want to call it easy, but it is that simple to be able to do on your own. So if you write an article, for example, in Medium or in Thrive Global, and you are there and you put that on your social media, say, I was just featured as a contributor on Thrive Global, the overall brand perception for somebody who's just looking at your work or seeing it come through the feed is like, wow, look at this person. They're really doing some great work. And it's a way to do it for free. It's just your hard-earned energy of writing the article about something that you're focused on. So that book is basically a guide on how to reach reporters, how to reach writers, and help them see that you can literally make a difference in your own brand just by these small tweaks. If people go to my website, I have that free guide there that they can get information all for free. And then I also have a newsletter that I'm doing every month, and it will give you tips and stuff like that on how you can get this opportunity for free.
They can follow you on social media, right? Because you're on. What you tell us how to find you on social media platforms.
Yeah, Christine Haas on Facebook, and then it's Christine Haas TV, I think, on Instagram. I don't even know. And so I'm working to do some more on those outlets as well. And I'm launching a YouTube channel next month. And so
Oh,
I'm really
fantastic.
excited
So
about
what's going
that.
to be on the YouTube channel? So tell us about
You
that.
know, yeah, it's a little bit of everything about, but more so about entrepreneurism and how to build a business and how to overcome some of these challenges that you and I talk about
Yep.
today. And I feel like I really want to be a place where people can, resonate with somebody who is also a business builder, but also a professional and trying to show up as a classy woman in this type of industry. I think, we've seen so many bad articles out there and outlets that talk about how it can be more difficult for women to, kind of circumvent
Yep.
professionalism these days because you want to be taken seriously, but at the same
Yep.
time, you don't want to, mislead people. And so it can be an interesting balance, where you've got to figure out, are people after you for business or are they after you for something else? And,
Yeah.
it is the way it is. So you just have to overall show up in a classy way. And I just kind of talk about that and the challenges of making sure that people respect you for your intelligence. I really want to reach young women, to be honest
Yep.
with you, because I want them to realize, much like you were talking about in your TikTok, I want them to have that understanding that you don't have to sell out for,
Yep.
your appearance or anything like that. You need to be respected and you can be a beautiful, classy person, but people should know your intelligence first. And
Absolutely.
be the whole package. You don't need to, do anything just to get in the door other than show your intelligence. I remember
Yep.
I was always so nervous in the beginning of my media career. I mean, I was so immersed in, climbing the ladder and doing good work that, I felt almost intimidated on some of the bigger market interviews I would go on where people would say, oh, well, it's just because she's, blonde or whatever, tall blonde or whatever. That's why she's getting this job. And I remember, and my ex-husband will tell, we're still good friends and partners for work. And he still tells the story that every news interview I would go on for a news market, for example, like if I'm trying to hop into a new market and
Yep.
going on an employment interview, I would always wear a pantsuit, always. Because I just wanted it to be like she's here for professional reasons. Because everybody judges a book by its cover, but I want to be known by more than what I'm wearing or anything. I want to be respected for being a good person and an intelligent business person.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm really thrilled to hear that. And when it comes out, I definitely want to promote it. So you definitely got
Thanks.
to make sure to hit me up so that we can put it out there for all
I
of
will.
my social media channels. But such a powerful thing to be launching at this time. Like you said, it's, we're not immune to seeing what has happened over the last several years, especially at the major news outlets. And, the unfortunate circumstances that individuals have been placed in. And it's sickening, right? To know that that goes on and that happens. And for you to put that out there and be that mentor and that good guide and voice, we have to get it out to the younger generation of young professionals that are coming in, because it's not just in the news, business, it's in every business, right? And I think
Well,
that
yeah.
message is valuable.
And what I think is so hard watching it, honestly, just as a woman, a business owner, as a person, no matter what, as a parent, is what's happening on social media. These
Yes.
women are young girls are just doing, TikTok dancing and all this. And not saying TikTok is bad, but it's like it's become all about the physical nature of
It
social
has.
media and influencing. And it's not about what people are talking about. It's just the images. And I think that that's just a difficult time that we're in. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm sure that it makes some people very wealthy and they have a very good platform, but I just don't want it to completely cloud our young women as they look at ways to advance. It shouldn't be all about how they dance and what little they're wearing on TikTok. It should
That's
be
right.
about what they can give to our community.
I
So that's
agree.
just what I hope to talk about and to inspire people to learn that, having an education and having the brains and having the depth of conversation will set you apart no matter what. It's not just the exterior.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. And then I have a couple ideas that we could talk about offline,
I love
about
it.
some organizations that I think you should potentially approach for speaking. I'd be happy to make some connections for you in that
Love
regard,
that.
because I think just getting as many eyes and ears on what you're working on and the just the passion that I hear in your voice about this, I think is so critical, and perhaps we can escalate that viewership as quickly as possible.
I love that. See, the
Yeah.
ripple effect in full effect.
It is. Well, so let me finish with two things. Like one, 10 years from now, where do you find yourself? What do we see you doing at that point? What will you have liked to have accomplished in that period of time?
I'm transitioning in some of my business in working on some more of the passion projects. And so I really hope that on a bigger scale, my public relations and government affairs company, as we scale and grow, will have some more impact on bigger issues. Like we mentioned earlier, human trafficking, this issue that's unfolding in Afghanistan. I'm involved in trying to get some media exposure for some people who are intimately close to that right now. And it comes back to the conversation that we had earlier, like, what fulfills you. And yesterday I was able to tee up, and not to talk details, but I was able to tee up some really big national news for a very critical issue that's unfolding in Afghanistan. That's heartbreaking. But when I was able to, I just gave the connection, much like the ripple, I gave the connection, and we're going to see it on the news here in a couple days. And it made me feel so good, about, and I did it all without any money or anything. It just made me feel so good that I was helping make a difference. That's what I hope in 10 years my business will be really based off of. And that is, from a YouTube perspective, whether it's videos to inspire people and impact them and give them confidence and give them direction as young women. I hope to be known for that in 5-10 years. And then I hope that my business is, really focused on bigger, missions to help really make a good impact and spotlight the people. That's the whole thing for publicity, right? I want to spotlight those people who are making positive differences in our world.
That's awesome. Well, you have my number. You know how to get a hold of me. So if there's anything I can do, I'm there in a heartbeat to help you any way I can. Last thing I would ask you. Well, I appreciate that. I need lots of work. So I'm just I would say one last thing. So, I'm all about the, kind of the ripple effect of, what you can do, how you can connect and how you can engage. But, could you think of one story that you could share with us that somebody created a positive ripple for you and how it made an impact to inspire you to maybe do it for somebody else? Sounds like maybe tied to this, thing that you did yesterday may have something to do with that.
Yeah. Boy, there have been quite a few people who have been impactful in my life. It's hard to pick. But I would say that, you're going to make me cry. I'll try not to do that. I was in some really tough personal stuff over the years. And I think a lot of women and men maybe too, can deal with some domestic issues, with abuse. And it's not always just physical abuse. Sometimes it's the emotional abuse. And, there have been several people in my life who have reached out and have tried to, just tell me that they're praying for me or thinking of me. And actually very similar to this conversation, which I think you did years ago. You texted me just randomly and said, I want you to know how positive you are and what a great influence you are. And people like that, including yourself, when those things come out of the blue, that has changed my life. It has changed my entire, every part of me. It's changed my faith. It's allowed me to build my business. It's allowed me to be a better parent. And most of all, it has allowed me to emotionally survive. I don't, someday I'll talk about that publicly. I don't know when, and I don't know how to do it properly, because I want to, make sure that, I don't want it to be a woe is me kind of story. I think the most important story that can come out of it is exactly what you said, that little things that you can do for somebody that you don't even know are hurting, or you don't know what they're going through. Those little things can make a big impact on their life, and you may never even know until years later. But, if you reach out to people who are in trouble, and maybe you don't even know the details, but if you show some kindness, you can cause that ripple effect, and you can literally help them get inspired to change their life. It doesn't happen every day, but I hope that in the future I can continue to do that for other women who have been in similar circumstances, because I was in some deep trouble emotionally for a while, and the fact that I'm sitting here and and being a helpful person to people who are, in trouble themselves and also in business and a successful growing business. Years ago, I would have never believed I was sitting here. So I have to try to sometimes give myself credit for that.
Well, you are an inspiration to me and to anybody that knows you and has now gotten an opportunity to meet you through the podcast or the video. And, you're a courageous individual. I know what you went through at that point and what it took for you to make it through the other side, but I had no doubt because you're a strong, amazing person and the world needs more of you, right? So I'm so grateful that you're branching out and doing these other outlets. And I highly encourage, if you're, watching this episode, go find a way to get to ChristineHaas.com so that you can learn about the work that she's doing. If you are a small, medium-sized business that's considering impacting your message, getting prepared to, interact with the media, or just getting a little more confident about what you're doing out there in the world, whether it's through your product, your service, or just publicly, promoting your brand, Christine and her team can absolutely help you get to the next level. They are amazing. And just follow her on social media because she is incredible. You will get just amazing, pearls of wisdom that will come from this, from her posts. You'll definitely benefit greatly. So Christine, just, last time, tell people again how to find you on any of the other platforms that you might want them to follow you on.
Yeah, ChristineHaas.com is going to be best. LinkedIn, of course, Christine Haas. And then Christine Haas TV is Instagram. And that's where now you're going to make me post some videos today. Now I'm feeling guilty. I've got no excuse. I've got to do it today.
Yep, there you go. Well, see, I'm creating a ripple there for,
exactly.
The great content will be coming, very shortly. So Christine, thank you so much for being on the Ripple Effect podcast. We will definitely have to do this again. We have so many other things that we could take this conversation. I'm excited to do it again. And I just appreciate you more than you could ever know.
Same here. Like I said, the ripple that you've made in my life is impactful. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We'll take care. And as always, ripple on.